Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the course of Language Teaching Methodologies. The topic of today's lecture is direct method, advantages and disadvantages. We will also study the techniques being used by the practitioners of direct method. I am Muhammad Asif Khan, lecturer, Department of English, Kohat University of Science and Technology. Discussion agenda for today's class is that first of all I will revise the things which we have studied in the last lecture about the direct method. First of all, I will give you the goals and objectives of direct method, and we will also revisit and discuss the main features of direct method. The main discussion of today's lecture is that we will study the advantages and disadvantages of this method, and in the end I will tell you some of the common techniques used by teachers and the theorists of the direct method. Coming to the goals and objectives, as I told you in the last lecture, that the basic aim is to establish a direct link or bond between the experience and expression of the learner. So basically it is the technique in which learner thinks and communicates in the target language. So it is the method in which acquisition of the language is being done in the natural way, and we see that grammar is taught to the students and learners in inductive way. So the basic focus of the direct method is on the development of the oral skills, and we see that for that reason native language is avoided in direct method. So these are the goals that are being set by the teacher who is following direct method. And the main features of direct method are that classroom instructions are conducted exclusively in the target language, and we see that basically they are trying to build up the oral skills of the learner, and the grammar is taught inductively, and new teaching points, all of the new teaching points are introduced orally. So basic focus is on the oral skill, and all other skills are taught through the medium of oral skill. We see that students are often being introduced with the speech and listening comprehensions, but all these activities are connected to the development of oral communication. That is the reason that we see that correct pronunciation is very important in this method. They also try to teach grammar to the students, but the method they use is inductive method, and that is all about the features of the direct method. Now let's move towards the advantages of direct method. And it is often being said that it is a natural method, because we see that in this method the order of teaching or the order of learning language is listening, speaking, and that is being followed by reading and writing. And we see that this is the method which is being used by the children when they are learning their first language. So that is the advantage of this method, that when we are learning the second language and we use the direct method, actually we are following that order that is being used when we are learning our first language. For that reason, no translations are allowed, and students are not forced to be a translator of the language. Most important concept, as I told you earlier, is the oral training, and we see that oral training helps simultaneously in the 4 other skills, and these skills are listening, speaking, reading, writing. Basically, these oral trainings help and facilitate the understanding of the language. So when we are doing these practices, It gives the fluency of speech and improves pronunciation. In this way, with the fluency in the speech and understanding of the language, we see that all these very capabilities aids the written work, and it also facilitates the study of the literature, which is often being considered as the first priority in the grammar translation method. But we see that here the via they are using is that by developing oral skills, we can improve our written and reading skills. And in this way, we can even study the literature of that very language. Another important advantage of the direct method is that we use audio-visual aids, and that turns the lesson into an interesting activity. When we are using these audio-visual aids, students are and the learners are very much excited about using these aids, and in this way they learn and they participate in the activities very actively. Another important advantage of the direct method is that students acquire or they learn the new language that is based on the observations of the student. Language acquisition in this method is very much similar to the mother tongue, and we see that it allows the students to learn new words and expressions very quickly, because we are using the same formula that we have used when we were learning the mother tongue. So it becomes very convenient for the student to learn new words and expressions, and the speed of learning is very fast. In addition to that, we see that students are able to understand what they are learning, because they are in the activity to think about these very things. And when they think about these things, then they express their own ideas in correct way. And we see that they are very much competent. They have that ability to express their own views about those very ideas which they have read or learned. So it really improves their expression power. We see that in this method, teacher explains the new vocabulary by using realia and visual aids or demonstrations. It helps the students to develop the active vocabulary instead of just learning the ideas and just keeping those very words in their passive vocabulary, which they are not able to use in their conversation. In direct method, that is the most important thing, that when you are learning with new vocabulary, you are capable of using that vocabulary. So that is your active vocabulary. Instead of instead of just stocking passive vocabulary in your mind, in direct method we are learning that vocabulary which is actually the vocabulary which we can use in our daily conversation. In addition to that, this method is full of activities, and students and learners are very excited about the things being introduced by the teacher. The most important thing is that it increases the employment opportunities for the learners, because when you are fluent and when you have the ability to use the language in situation, and you have the ability to use the language functionally, then it automatically improves your opportunities to get good employment. Basically, the advantage of this method is that it proceeds from particular to general, and in this way it bridges the gap between the practice and theory. So when we are using direct method, actually we are using language practically. It is not just learning about the language. Instead of that, we are learning the language. In grammar translation method, when we were studying the rules and regulations, actually we were studying about the language. But here, when we practically use the language, actually we are using the language. So these are the advantages of direct method. Now let's see some of the disadvantages of the direct method. One of the claim about the direct method is that it is incomplete method, because we see that it emphasizes too much on the speaking or the oral practices. So it does not work systematically on the written work and the reading activities. So we see that they are ignoring this very aspect of the language, which is the complete feature of language learning. One more disadvantage of the direct method is that it requires efficient teachers, and the efficiency of the teachers of direct method, especially in the conversational skills. If the teacher is not good at conversational skills, then he is unsuccessful in the direct method class. So it depends on the teacher's skill rather than on a textbook. And when this very method is being used, we fail to achieve uniform results. Why we fail to achieve uniform results? Because when we are having competent teacher, then results are very different. And on the other side, we see that if the teacher is not that efficient in conversational skills, then he will produce very different results. So it requires very efficient teachers, and we can't rely on the textbooks in this very method. I will also tell you that the material facilities, because in direct method we most of the time use audiovisual aids, we see that these very materials and facilities are not available in majority of our schools. Our schools are lacking these facilities. For that reason, we can't use direct method in our schools. So it is not feasible for the societies where there are not that much well-equipped schools present. Another disadvantage of direct method is that we can use this method most of the time in small classes, and it needs small classes for the successful delivery of the direct method. But the problem in the schools where we are living is that most of the schools are overcrowded, and the classes are with that number where we can't use a direct method because it needs individual attention to the students, and if teacher is not able to give individual attention to every student, then he can't use this method successfully. These were the advantages and disadvantages of direct method. Now I move towards the common techniques being used in the direct method. The key aspects of this method are that when we are introducing the new concepts like new words or numbers or alphabet characters or any concept which we are introducing, which are often being referred in direct method as elements, then we use a strategy that is show, say, try, mold, and repeat strategy. That is the initial way of introducing new concepts or new elements to the students. So I will give you the detail of each and every point of this very technique. First of all, the teacher shows that very thing, and the method he uses for showing the thing is that he points to that visual aid, or he gestures like that very thing when he is introducing some verb to the students, to ensure this very thing that student clearly understand what is being taught. The second thing is that after pointing out, or after gesturing that very thing, he say that very thing, he name that very thing, or teacher introduces that element verbally. But here he do this very thing with care and enunciation. So first thing is that he points out the visual aid or gesture that very thing, then he say the name of that very thing when he is introducing that element, and then he make the students to try to pronounce the new element. Here come the molding phase, because teacher correct the students if necessary, and he points out to the mouth to show the proper shaping of the lips. But students have to correct themselves. He is not forcing anyone to do that very thing. He is just pointing out, and he shows the proper shapes of the lips and tongue and relationship to the teeth. So it is the time when he is molding and correcting the students. Then comes the stage of repeating that very thing. Student repeats each element 5 to 20 times. It depends upon the capabilities of the student. So first of all, teacher shows that very thing to the students, then he say that thing, and students try to pronounce that very element. If they are okay, then teacher makes them to repeat that very thing. But if they are making mistake, then teacher corrects them, and he points out to the mouth, show proper shaping of the lips and tongue and relationship to teeth. So this is the first phase of introducing new elements to the students. Then comes the second phase, that is the intermediate phase, and we see that here teacher states a phrase or sentence to the student, and students repeat such phrases or such sentences 5 to 20 times. And now it is not that simple, because earlier we see that the teacher just introduced a word, number, alphabet, characters or concept, but here we see that he is moving towards the advanced concepts, and here he is introducing complete sentences to the students. So phrases and sentences are introduced to the students, and they have to repeat these very phrases and sentences 5 to 20 times. After that, teacher asks questions, and students have to reply in these very questions in negative. For example, the teacher asks that, are you the President of United States? And students say no. So this is one of the method where he is trying to give them that liberty, that they should think about that very concept, and they should develop that ability to answer these questions in negative, or to reply these questions in negative. After that, another phase comes where a teacher provides intuitive examples by using 5 W's, and these interrogative questions help to develop the conversational abilities of the students. Then comes the stage of pronouns with verbs. In this phase, we see that teacher uses the visual aids, and he shows photos and gives illustrations or gestures, and then teacher covers all the pronouns. Students have to connect different pronouns with these very verbs, and in this way they form the complete sentences. And the last step of this second phase is that student must choose and utilize the correct elements, as well as posing appropriate questions as teacher did. So they are being given different structures, and student has to use the correct element in that very situation. Another ability is being developed in the student, and that is that student starts posing appropriate questions as a teacher do in the third stage of this second phase. Now, some of the common techniques being used by the teachers of the direct method are the question answer exercises. We see that teacher asks questions of any type and student answers these very questions, and this question answer session initiates the discussion, and in this way they interact with one another and they develop their oral skills. But for developing the other skills of the language, like writing skill or the reading skill, we see that they use other techniques also. Like we see that dictation is also being used by the teachers of the direct method, and here we see that teacher chooses a grade appropriate passage and he reads it aloud. This also helps in improving the pronunciation of the students. We also see that here the teacher reads the passage 3 times, and it gives the opportunity to the students to make corrections. When they write something and the teacher is reading that passage again, they have time to make corrections. In this way they are self-correcting the material which they have themselves written. Another technique is reading aloud, and the student take turn reading section of a passage, and even they read aloud the plays or the dialogues, and by reading these passages or plays or dialogues, they not only develop their reading skill but also their speaking skill. In addition to that, they also use conversational practices, and we see the students are given opportunity to ask their own questions to other students, or even they can ask questions to the teachers. This enables both teacher-learner interaction as well as the learner-learner interaction. In other methods, we see that there is only interaction between the teacher and the learner. But here in this conversational practices, when students get the opportunity to ask questions from the teacher, even they can ask questions from the fellow students, here comes the opportunity that students or learners, they can communicate with one another. Another technique being used by the teachers of direct method is of the paragraph writing, and we see that students are asked to write passage in their own words. Map drawing is another technique. Students are given maps, and these very maps are without labels, and the students have to label these very maps by following the directions given by the teachers. So these are some of the methods being used by the teachers of the direct method. Dear students, today we studied the advantages and disadvantages of direct method, and we also studied the key aspects of the common techniques being used in direct method. And I told you about the 2 phases in which teacher introduces the new elements to the student, and we also studied that what type of techniques teachers often use in this class. Thank you very much for listening passionately. I hope that now you will be having a clear idea about the direct method of instruction or direct method of teaching English language. So thank you very much.